Sitting here with, in your role as general manager with the Marlies, Dave Poulin. And Dave, I want to take you back first to the moment you guys chose Steve Spott as the head coach and kind of what went into that decision, and it certainly turned out well enough.
Well, I think it probably goes back to before we chose Steve Spott. And in our role, we see a lot of hockey games, and we watch the way teams play. We watch the way coaches develop players. That all goes into the process. So you always, and some take it to the extent of having a list in their top right-hand drawer should something happen. At that point it was Dallas Eakins. Should Dallas move on to another position? Should a change be made? Who would candidates be? And we talked a lot, Davey Nonis and Claude Loiselle and I, about top candidates. And Steve was always someone that we had watched. And we had the unique opportunity to see his teams play a lot in Kitchener. We watched them over a period of time. It wasn't a very short period of time. And so when we were looking to fill the position, he was certainly at the top of the list. And we went through a pretty good interview process. We interviewed coaches that had been in the NHL and the American League. There was a great deal of interest in the job, which I think is flattering to the organization, and how much interest there was in the position. And Steve stood out. And, we've been very, very pleased with the first year. Some of the factors, he had obviously, we were going very young. He had coached the age group. He had coached junior hockey. He had coached a lot of the like-aged kids. But he had coached some very high-end kids that had turned pro right as 18-year-olds. So a Jeff Skinner, Gabriel Landeskog. These young men, he got them from different places. Take a Gabriel Landeskog, came over from Europe, played from at a young age, and was prepared to play in the NHL at 18. And Jeff Skinner was prepared to play in the NHL at 18. And that was Skinner was probably more of a developed preparedness, where, at the start of the year, you said, boy, he's going to be taken 7th overall. And by the way, he's going to be able to play as an 18-year-old. Well, you might have got some questions on that. So you look at key factors and key things that are common in that, and the common factor was Steve Spott and the job he was doing in Kitchener.
One of the things you decided to do for Steve Spott, and coaches oftentimes are able to bring their own assistants in, but you gave him Derek King and Gord Dineen. What's the reasoning behind that, or what was it at the time?
Well, that was a joint decision. He had the freedom to look at the situation. He basically interviewed both Gord and Derek, as we did at the time. They were both candidates for the head position, and we talked to them about the head position, both of them. Both have, good credentials. And I think the uniqueness of a head American League coach stepping into a head NHL job and leaving his two assistants in the same position, that's probably a pretty unique situation. We were very pleased with the job they had done in the past and the job they had done with the Marlies. And so, but it was Steve who made the final decision. He was happy with them. When he gave us the criteria of what he would be looking for in assistants, so part of the interview process was, what would you think about assistants? When he gave us the criteria of what he would be looking for, he wanted someone who had played in the NHL, who had played at a high level. So we had two people in place who filled a lot of the criteria that he was looking for.
So a team takes on its head coach's persona a little bit, and this team has been loose. It has been competitive. It has been a lot of things that I'm sure you foresaw in it. But have you been happy with the outcome so far of what this team has done?
Well, very much so. It's a very challenging level in many ways to coach at, but it also may be the purest place to coach, because you don't deal with a lot of the other things. And you really do probably have, the hammer might not be the right word, but the hammer over the players. The players, in many ways, the challenge is they want to move from here. So you're coaching them at a level when their goal is to leave you. And you are in control of that in many ways, because you have a lot of say in who's playing the best and who would fit when a call-up happens. And so to that end, it's a very challenging, because you don't know on a given night what your lineup is, because we may make a change with the Maple Leafs at the last minute. At 4 o'clock, your lineup may be one thing. At 5 o'clock, you may be missing your two top players. And to that point, Steve has been absolutely seamless in knowing that he just goes with whatever happens. There's no flinching. There's no, oh, really? It's just, okay, great, here's our lineup tonight. And I think that spreads down to the players. I really do. I think the energy level that he coaches with and the no excuses factor, because we don't know what the lineup is going to be at the American League level on a given night. He takes the lineup he has and he goes out and wins with it.
I know you've had a great long look at some players and their development so far this season, so I want to throw a couple of names at you to see how they've developed in your eyes as well. Let's start first with a guy who's started in the last couple of weeks just to up his game to another level, Sam Carrick.
Sammy, when we first drafted Sammy out of Brampton, we talked a lot about him being a hockey player. And that may seem unusual because we're drafting hockey players, but he really was an all-round hockey player. He played a growing role in Brampton up to when he was the captain in his final year, a growing level in the league, 30-plus goal scorer his final year. So we watched a player sort of grow, and we loved his compete level all the way through. And last year, in a less than ideal situation with the lockout, there was such a premium on spots that Sam actually played in the East Coast Hockey League for a good portion of the year in Idaho early. And to his credit, he just took it and said, great, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to be their best player. They loved him down there. They loved his attitude. We brought him back up. He finished the year with the Marlies. But he's a young man who has just worked on getting better. He does everything in the game, and he's just got to keep upping that level of what he does. He'll win a faceoff. He'll engage physically. He'll finish a check. He'll block a shot. He'll kill a penalty. He does all of those things. He's moved between center and right wing, and he keeps getting better. And that's the development piece of this. There's no pro forma for exactly how long it takes a player to develop. And a lot of it becomes the player's responsibility to keep moving in a positive direction, and Sam has done that.
On defense, Petter Granberg got a game late in the year with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had been a steady defenseman all season long for the Toronto Marlies. Your thoughts?
Well, I'd probably extend it to 3 young defensemen because we had 3 first-year American Hockey League players, all coming from different backgrounds and all in different scenarios. So you have Andrew McWilliam, who's a late-round draft pick, who in this day and age, and some of it was injury-related, stayed the full 4 years of college before turning pro. So he's coming in with a little more age, a little more experience from a year's standpoint, but no pro experience. The second one is Stuart Percy, who's a first-round draft pick, very high pick, very highly regarded player. And coming in, he's had a little bit of a taste in the previous 2 years in the Springs, but coming in for his first full year, but growing up in Toronto, acclimated to the North American game. The third one, Petter Granberg, a mid-level draft pick who had really blossomed in the elite league in Skellefteå in Sweden, and then played for the World Championship, played for the World Junior team, won a championship in each of those 3 categories, which is highly unusual, but didn't know the North American game, the North American ice surface, or a North American city. And so you really had 3 really unique, different looks at watching players develop. And to their credit, each one of them has embraced it, has gotten better. They're all a little bit different type of player. Petter is more of a defensive shutdown guy, not highly offensive, but moves the puck well, simple plays, very, very strong. Tommy Bergman, our Swedish scout, maintained that he was one of the strongest players in the Swedish Elite League as a 20-year-old. But really natural strength. But I think he's gotten more and more comfortable. You think of all the different factors of acclimating to a city, to a culture. We take for granted what these kids go through, in terms of that. And I would say all 3 have acclimated very well. Petter had a chance to play in the final NHL game of the year, looked very, very comfortable. I think all 3 have bright futures.
I think we've only got time for one more. We're going to have to get to some of the other guys maybe at a later point in the playoffs. But Josh Levo, just your quick thoughts on Josh Levo.
Josh was a little bit of probably a reach at the point he was drafted. He came on very strong in Sudbury. Dave Morrison, our head scout, really liked what he saw. But his second half of his draft year was really, really coming on. So it was a little bit of a projection. And first 20-goal scorer as a rookie in a long time here. And really a sniper. Good. The combination things, I think eventually Josh grows into his body and becomes more of a power forward and a combination power forward. But what he brings in the corners is he can slip and slide, but he can bang into you as well. And that's a rare combination to try and defend, because if you go too hard at him, he'll slip by you. But if you go too soft at him, he's going to bang you. And I think he's got a very bright future in that role as well.
Dave, hopefully we get to talk to you throughout the playoffs and get your thoughts on some of the rest of the Marlies that have developed over the course of this season. I thank you for this.